They say don't start when you're ready, just start.
Just start. 2 companies, I'm not going to mention companies. One company has a technology and they're trying to perfect it before they go to market. There's another company that has a technology, they're like, who cares? Let's just throw it into the market and let the clients and everybody else complain about it and we'll fix it as we go along. Fast forward 24 months later, the company that was trying to perfect it went bust. The company that went to market and fixed it all along, they were proving their model, they got market share, they got out there and they grew. So the story is, don't be scared to go out there and make mistakes.
That's right.
Go out there and make it happen.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Blueprint for Closers, episode 15. My name's Dominic Ciccarelli with my co-host, Rob Nixon. What's up, buddy?
Happy to be here. How's it going?
Doing great, man. Happy New Year. We're here with none other than George Christo from Door to Door Realty, our good friend and colleague we've been doing business with for a long time. Welcome to the show, George.
Hello, everybody. I'm glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for coming, man. So looking forward to this episode. You operate in a unique niche real estate market. Before we get into all that, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and where you're from and your life until you got into this business.
Grew up in Bay Ridge, Brooklyn, Greek immigrant family. I'm first generation Greek. My father was in the car business. We had a repair shop, and growing up, all I did was work on cars. That was my thing. Fast forward, working on cars. I met some guys that were looking to do some restorations, some builds, wound up becoming friends with them, and they introduced me to Wall Street. And I wound up getting on Wall Street and spent 5-6 years on Wall Street. And then after Wall Street, it was the tech bubble crash. I moved in and I walked away from it. A couple of companies I did erectile dysfunction. I built big positions, and one of the companies was in the early 2000s was Envision Technologies. Was a big position, and I owned a lot of stock in the company. Stock went from as high as 26 to 15. I had a lot of stock. Went down to $3. Market crashed. I lost a bunch of stuff. Wound up sleeping on my cousin's couch from having a beautiful, beautiful home. And I said, I can't do this anymore. And I went into real estate. Coincidentally, Envision Technologies was bought out by Chase for $70 a share, like 7-8 months later.
Wow.
And I was the largest position holder in the company, outside of company shareholders. So
You still had it at the time?
no, I lost everything. I had margin calls. And I did, at that time it was Pfizer was coming out with the little blue pill, and there was a lot of other companies that had erectile dysfunction applications, and we made a lot of money because there was a lot of momentum there. So we did well. But you're only as good as your last ticket.
Well, what years would you say were those years that was wrapping up?
98 to 2000.
And then at some point, obviously, you turned to real estate.
And it turned to real estate. I always liked real estate. That was my goal. My goal was to get into real estate back then too. But interest rates were much higher then. Interest rates came down to a very palatable rate. I mean, what were they at one point? I looked at today, I looked at a couple of deals that I have another 2-3 years left on my arm, and I have it at 4.25, on a commercial deal.
Wow.
But those deals I did, 2014, 2015. A lot of things happened in 2014, 2015.
Yep.
It was really controversial, especially after the venture debacle, because everybody was trying to reinvent themselves and create liquidity opportunities for people that were tied up in stock and companies and mortgages. They were trying to provide some liquidity. The Freedom Act that Obama put out.
Yep.
Enabled, liquidation of the private company stock. So private equity took off, and everybody was buying these pre-IPO companies. And when these companies were going public, they were buying these shares from insiders that were caught, whether it was their mortgage or whatever the case may be. You were an insider in these companies and you found some liquidity and you sold it to these funds. And then those funds were definitely doing well when these IPOs took off. So yeah, I mean, it's everything's a trend.
So in 2000, when you exited from Wall Street, you were still in Brooklyn?
So I moved out. I got onto Wall Street in 1994. I got my license 95, 96, and I moved into Staten Island because I didn't want to take the train. I moved into Staten Island because I liked the ferry much better. And I lived right down by the water there. So I was walking to the ferry, getting, on the ferry. It was really good, really nice. And going into the city. And I worked right at 17 State Street. So it was convenient. Easy. It was great. And and when in 2001, so hold on, there's something I forgot. So yeah, I wanted to go into real estate, but 2001, when I was a broker, I had raised about $15 million for a company that was a web-based point of sale, and they were based out in Canada, and they were about to sell their technology to NCR, National Cash Register. I went out there and I was consulting with that company after the market crashed, trying to find, sell the technology to try to save my clients from the investment that we were in. But everybody walked away from everything. It wasn't a good situation, but the technology was still there. But by the time the technology picked up, that's what it is with technology, right? Something else came out, and before you know it, it was much faster. Internet became faster. Other technology started to come in. If you don't act, two companies, I'm not going to mention companies, but two companies. One company has a technology and they're trying to perfect it before they go to market. There's another company that has a technology. They're like, who cares? Let's just throw it into the market and let the clients and everybody else complain about it, and we'll fix it as we go along. Fast forward 24 months later, the company that was trying to perfect it went bust. The company that went to market and fixed it all along, they were proving their model, they got market share, they got out there and they grew. So the story is, don't be scared to go out there and make mistakes.
That's right.
Go out there and make it happen.
They say, don't start when you're ready, just start.
Just start.
Yeah. A lot of young people, trying to figure out what they're doing, they end up spending most of their life trying to figure that out. No, just pick a direction and jump in.
Just jump in.
And figure it out.
I also think it's, especially for younger people, I think it's equally important, if not more important, to figure out what you don't want to do.
Right.
And the only way to do that is by going.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's part of sometimes where I second guess myself, because you jump into something, you're like, let's just go, who cares, we'll fix it. And then you start to say, okay, wait a minute, this isn't the direction. You just got to be malleable and say, okay, wait, you know what? Let's learn from this. Let's go here and start building and just keep going.
Learning from mistakes is huge. A lot of people make the same mistakes over and over again. That's where they get jammed up. You gotta learn.
Making the same mistake over and over again is a psychosis.
So going high view, right? Door to door, has been in business now, how many years?
22 years.
And now over the course of that, you've done what? You've built tons and tons of houses, buildings, commercial. What's the lineup like?
The lineup started with, I took advantage of loose lending, renovated apartments by using my credit cards. I was getting the income from the apartments and paying down my credit cards. So
just to be clear, so this goes back to, I think, the last great American, I don't want to say scam, but back in the day, a lot of guys were getting interest-free credit cards at high lines.
Yeah.
Interest-free for a year. They'd cash out the credit card, buy the house, fix it, rent it, cash out before the interest was due, and then pay back the credit card.
That's right.
Free money.
That's right.
A lot of people don't take advantage of that as much as they should.
Yeah, I took advantage of it because I had revenue from being on Wall Street. That was, a lot of money a year. At least for me it was. And I was able to leverage that because, if the mariachi player was able to get money and buy a house, well, the guy with, revenue that has a trailing 12 or 24, they were giving me money. So yeah, I took advantage of it. And it worked out. So I focused a lot of the building on the North Shore of Staten Island. There was an up and coming opportunity there because downtown Manhattan was thriving. World Trade Center, technology.
Battery Park
was booming. you had a lot of young urban professionals that were coming in from all over the country, and I was renting apartments to these people because renting a 2-bedroom in Staten Island for $1,500, $1,800 was like, wow, it's a lot of money. If you went into Manhattan to rent that 2-bedroom, you're spending $3,500 to $4,000. So it was a great opportunity. I made them trendy, give them views, yada yada. That worked out well. But then that turned around. And then what wound up happening is you started to see an influx of low-income housing coming in. And they were looking at the housing stock and they were saying, okay, fine, let's rent it. And we were renting 2 bedrooms for $1,300. And you were getting, rent from the city, and it was very appealing. And then fast forward, it became very competitive for the city, and the housing problem persisted. And then they started raising their pay, their voucher number, to $1,500, $1,600 for 2 bedrooms, to the point now where the voucher number for a 2-bedroom is much greater than somebody looking for an apartment that could afford it, making $75,000 to $80,000 a year.
What does a 2-bedroom voucher go for now?
$2,700.
1 bedroom?
$2,200.
Definitely more than the market.
Yeah.
Totally more than the market. And go ahead.
What's unique about the North Shore is that over the last 22 years that you've been down there, there's been a lot of ups and downs with respect to buzz, right? First, you had the home port come in. That didn't work out. Knocked it down. Then they attempted to do Irby, right? And we could say what we want. It's successful development, unsuccessful development. It's having its struggling moments. Then we had the Wheel, right? I mean, the Wheel was the biggest hype. They put in Empire Outlets. They have the minor league baseball team. And then the Wheel goes bust. So, North Shore, Staten Island, I feel like just can't. You have great waterfront views of the city, but we just can't get our act together with respect to making that pop, making that boom happen. And now they're building a homeless shelter right in the heart of St. George.
Across the street from me, I have a building I'm putting up there. Yes. But I think that, the density issue needs to be addressed. So you're going to have an influx of poverty level housing coming in there. The retail stock is not going to be so great. You're not going to have the Dean and DeLucas there. That's for certain. You're going to have a lot more 99-cent stores.
Which who cares if there's density?
So you want density, and then what happens is that you're hoping that, you had something that happened that has changed real estate as we know it. Technology at first enabled the artisan person to go and work off Main Street because rent was cheaper and people would go there and the person could create a nice product and he didn't have to pay full retail to be on a storefront in a very busy area.
Right.
Fast forward now, Zoom. You have people now that could live anywhere. And you can sell a product or a presentation from anywhere.
It's a good point. I didn't actually think about that. It's a really good point.
And then what winds up happening is that saturation that you had initially is not there any longer. So now what you're trying to do is you're trying to develop, and everybody's like, oh, let's have a master plan. I've seen the master plans. There's missing components to getting them operating properly because it's trial and error. So if you don't leave that in your urban plan, how do you know and how can you jockey people around? And then you take the law or rental laws and you say, okay, let's get this person out, but it takes a year and the costs of all that. And now it starts to become more difficult and a developer would need to leave a lot more risk cost in the project in order for him to season it long enough for that project to succeed.
Including increasing density or upzoning, right? But if all the city agencies don't get together, it's not going to work, right? Upgrading, you and I involved in some projects. Yes, the zoning says you can have a 5-story building, but guess what? The size of the sewer in the street can't support that kind of building, or maybe traffic studies and public transportation. So everybody wants to upzone and everybody wants density, and I think it is needed here, but you need other city agencies to come in to support the development to be built. You can't just say, oh, all of a sudden this lot could be 5 stories where it used to be 2, but and then build it. You need the infrastructure around it.
I'm having that issue at 12 Van Duzer. You're talking about a really cool building. I own a lot of property there. I own up the hill too. And so you're looking probably about 18 to 20,000 square feet. It's a tall building, but I don't have a sewer size big enough. And now I have to go and tap into the main sewer, which is on Victory Boulevard. And now I need the state to review us doing these penetrations is not documented properly. So sonar and this and that. Now you got to do test pits, and the amount of money that it's going to cost me for 60 feet of extension is my responsibility. And what's interesting is that you hear a lot of these people, the infrastructure's not there, you can't support. The developer would be responsible to put the infrastructure in.
Yeah.
You want them to go there and spend that money. Otherwise, what's going to wind up, and that's happening now, you have a lot of opportunity, and then you have city agencies that are saying, let's pay up for that. Go there, develop it, and fix this problem. Put them there.
Yeah.
And now what happens is that community takes a step back, because now there has to be absorption of that demographic into that community. And then, because if you look, poor communities evolving from immigrant communities has been happening from the early 1900s. And immigrant communities, when they go in and they go into crime-ridden neighborhoods, they keep their blinds closed. They hear crime, they hear this, they stay quiet, they mind their business, and they go out. And these neighborhoods usually have a higher crime rate. When it starts stepping up to a more affluent community, and these people are more concerned, and they want the day, they want the light, they want this, and they start to see more in the streets or more cameras, whatever, they start calling the police. Now you start to change the community.
Yep.
And that's part of what you're going to see down there. I'm going to switch gears. In the middle of all this, I wound up in the early 2000s. About 2006, 2007. I wound up buying churches, and I bought a few properties in Menessin, Pennsylvania. It's right outside of Pittsburgh. So Denora and Menessin, Pennsylvania, are very famous locations in the United States. It's the worst air pollution disaster we have ever experienced that enacted the Clean Air Act started in Denora.
Wow.
Really?
Yeah. Because it was immigrant communities that were built around steel production, and people were coming from all over the world, and they were going to work, and they were in these steel plants. And I mean, there's history about unions and killings, and there's a bunch of history there. We don't have too much time. We're not going to get there. But when we went there, how I got there, it's a funny story. I bought a church, and I bought this other building. It was an Eisenberg building, really cool buildings, and I bought them. And somebody told me that there was something going on with the building, and that it's neglect of public safety, and you got to come and take care of it. You're looking at 350 miles away. I went in the wintertime. I took my guys. I got in my truck, loaded it up, scaffolding and everything. And we got in there. It was funny. In the middle of the night, we went out there. I pulled up there around 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. We all got out, and I'm looking at the building. I'm looking at the facade. And this is Menessin. There's not too much traffic. And at that hour, when it shuts down, it shuts down. If you're there in the street with 4 or 5 guys, it's a scene. Cop car pulls up. Who are you? I said, yeah, I'm here. I'm looking at this building. What are you to this building? I'm the landlord. Get against the wall. I got arrested. I got arrested for neglect of public safety.
Wow.
So, long story short, I pleaded with the people there. I talked to the mayor. We got friendly. And I wound up getting a bunch of people there for the next 4 or 5 days, and I closed up the building. They let me out. I promised, look, I'll put a bond. Here's some money. Just give me a chance. I'll clean it. Give me a lumber yard. And they had people there in line in the morning. I was handing out hard hats, and we turned the building around with my guys. In a matter of 24 hours, we came back. But I wanted to mention that story because while we were there, I went there a few more times, you watched how these immigrant communities developed. And my thought was to take this housing and create an opportunity for these housing for veterans. There's housing stock of 600-700 houses that we were going to get. Unfortunately, the mayor lost the election. People didn't want change. They wanted to leave it the way it is. They didn't care that the crime rate was there. They didn't care how the area was. Older people, the older demographic doesn't want change.
Right.
And if you threaten change, they're going to challenge you. And it's the same scenario even on the North Shore of Staten Island with a lot of these civics. They're scared of change. They want to see something that is going to stimulate culture and so on and so forth. But sometimes the money's not there to support that movement.
That's right.
Not yet. I mean, it just, so many things have to happen first to get there.
Right.
And, you know, you said something interesting before about go and fix it as you go versus the other way. But the reality is, I mean, I remember all the picket lines about the wheel. The wheel would have been the best thing that ever happened to the North Shore. I firmly believe Lighthouse would have, the hotel would have been up by now. Empire Outlets would be fine. I mean, granted, retail has changed a lot and things have changed as a whole.
I was looking to do a boutique hotel with a brewery in it.
Would have been tremendous. I mean, it would have worked. The most conservative numbers in the world. Think about how many movies you would have seen it in. It was to me, it was heartbreaking that happened. And granted, it would have been a traffic nightmare. That's indisputable. But I think they would have figured it out.
Yeah. Well, that's the point. Point is, go out and do it and you figure it out.
Yeah. I heard there's an RFP out now for the wheel.
There is. There was a meeting about it last night, but they want to see something entertainment. But the reality is, can the area support it? Yeah. I don't know.
So talk to us about, listen, there's a lot of different ways you can invest in real estate. What's your sweet spot? I mean, we were talking about a little bit about immigrant communities and poverty level. I mean, is this where you're at and is where you feel comfortable and this is where you operate and thrive?
I'm not driven by poverty level housing. I am a real estate developer, builder. We have a management company and I create housing. I create housing where it's low cost, high impact, trendy, nice colors. You see my stuff, interesting stuff. And whoever can come and pay me for what I'm renting it for, I rent it to them. Now, if the majority of my real estate is poverty level housing, then that's the market in that area. Mm-hmm. And that's who I'm going to cater to. If people, if a banker making X amount of dollars wants to come and rent an apartment, I'll rent it to him.
Yeah.
I'm not, there's no prejudice there. I'm in the real estate business and I create a product. I know what my costs are and somebody wants to pay me that rent, I rent it to them.
Well, I think, and I've done business with George for years now, and I've learned a little bit what's different about your model, which I think is a really productive model. So builders by trade sell, right? That's what most builders build to sell. And every builder you talk to says, I wish I didn't sell half the stuff I sold, but you have always had the model of I'm going to build it to rent it. And if I happen to sell it, then I'll sell it.
Most of the time I don't, but yeah.
You mentioned Irby before. Irby's been 96% leased the last couple of years. Yeah. Irby's a success, period. By maybe the area, they would consider it not because there hasn't been enough going on. George has been in a similar position. You've had really successful real estate investments, but unfortunately, all the stuff around it just hasn't happened the way it should.
Well, Irby's a very good example because it's exactly what we're talking about, disposable income. Irby is occupied and their people are in there, but are the people in there supporting a lot of the local restaurants?
No.
There's your answer.
Yeah. Like I've personally designed almost every restaurant in Irby, and a few of them have turned over 3 or 4 times already.
Yep.
And it's just a sign that the people living there aren't supporting those restaurants. And the people that are coming from elsewhere to visit those restaurants might not be coming a second time because of the people living above. Or the surrounding environment of what's happening that hasn't popped yet around it.
Surrounding environment. I think Irby's created a really nice environment when you're there. But you're right, because I'm friendly with a guy that owns Sepe, who, the food's tremendous. And I'm like, I imagine you get enough business just in this building. He goes, if 5% of the building eats here, it's a lot.
Yeah.
And I'm like, really? But the model is supposed to be catering towards that.
Right.
Yet it doesn't. I lived there for 3 years and I still can't figure the place out. I don't know who lives there. I don't know when they're living there because I don't see anybody. I mean, it's interesting. Yeah. I guess you get, I don't know, actually. I've never really been able to figure it out. But I never had any of the bad experiences.
On the North Shore.
North Shore's got great food.
Great food. Parking is an issue, but that's inner city. I remember going to Peter Luger's And you used to have to worry about, getting shot by a stray bullet. But it is what it is.
Well, that's why I always appreciate when I get investors from like Brooklyn or Queens. And they're like, oh, the parking. And they're like, parking? What? Parking? Who cares? Because if you're in Brooklyn or Queens, you just don't care. You figure it out.
Vinham and Richmond now have some valet, so it's a lot easier. I love Richmond is a beautiful restaurant.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Really beautiful. And then there's Joe and Oteca. And you got Julian there with his restaurants, Blue. And what's his Mexican?
Beso Bayou.
Beso Bayou, yeah. So there's a number of good restaurants. My approach to real estate is figure out how much each apartment is, add up your costs, figure out how much money you got to go raise, and ask enough people to give you money. And providing the deal makes sense, any businessman that's looking to place money will place money there, providing you structure the right deal and you protect his money. That's it.
Yeah.
It's the only
Simple formula.
Simple formula. If you structure a deal and the deal is siding, they're not going to like it. They're not going to do the deal because investors don't want to think that if it fails, that they can't get their money back. So
where are you investing now?
I'm investing in the North Shore. I got a couple of buildings going up. I'm going for a variance on another one. I don't want to talk about it, but in private. And there are some pieces off of Bay Street that I just got into contract with.
So you haven't explored like investing down south, or you like to invest locally where you are, where you can touch it, feel it, smell it.
I know. Yeah. I don't have a problem going down south. Not a problem at all. But if I'm making money here and there's opportunity here, why do I need to change it?
Yep.
I have a lot of opportunity here and I know my markets and I could find the products and the real estate. And I just got to watch the money. You watch the money flow. When everybody doesn't want real estate, that's when I want to buy it. When people want to buy real estate, that's where I potentially sell it.
Mm-hmm. And over the years, what would you say is the percentage of stuff you actually sold as opposed to kept? Did you end up keeping most of the stuff that you've acquired?
Yeah. I keep mostly everything.
Can you say roughly like how many units you guys manage, or
a couple of hundred?
Okay.
And what was the biggest change you've seen over the last 22 years on the North Shore?
Poof. Where do you start?
We don't have enough time. The biggest change you're seeing in the last few years.
Yeah.
You're seeing in the last few years. You see that now that the city has a housing problem, that they have raised their voucher numbers, and you're seeing more and more, people that are sitting in the shelter going to work. But we don't have enough time. But one thing that would be an interesting conversation to have is the discussion about a girl or a woman that has 3 children and what the equivalent cost of income for her would be if she had to go out into the real world and work, and what the equivalent subsidies are giving her. And I could throw that out there, but the science is more specific, but you're looking at about 75 to 80,000.
Yeah, listen, in most cases, the welfare problem in New York City is a little bit broken with respect to the system. At this point, generationally, the parents are teaching the children how to kind of work the system.
Absolutely.
Because if they were to get, and listen, I have the same similar tenets where they get so much from the city that if they actually gave it up, and they're healthy people, right? But if they went to work, they would get so much less than what they get now being on the system, right? They're getting the food stamps, they're getting the utilities paid, they're getting their rent paid, they're getting clothing, they're getting cell phones. I mean, the list goes on. The best medical insurance.
Hold on, here's a problem. Problem is that somebody making over $650 a week, if somebody is working and they're getting subsidy, and then their income goes up on the books over 600,
yep,
they're not poverty level anymore, and they cut their subsidy.
That's
so
right.
They're like, why would I make more money? It's better for them to stay home and stay on subsidy. So where's the mechanics to that? Where's the logic to that? So a girl that has 3 children living in a 3-bedroom apartment says to herself, for me to go out and work, I wouldn't be able to afford this.
Yeah.
Because
For me to go work, I can't afford to live
the way I'm living,
not working. I mean,
right.
that is, if that's
The biggest problem is the city of New York wants to throw money at the issue as opposed to solving the problem. There need to be workshops out there, training seminars. There need to be work placement, job fairs. And they need to stop. I'm going to use the word spoiling, but paying so much. It's good for people in our business because we rather get the higher rent, but it's not solving the problem.
the system's broken from the top down. Even if you go, upper middle class, work your way down, go to college. That's the thing. Trade schools are a thing of the past. Meanwhile, I know some of the most successful guys I know own electrical companies,
Plumbing companies.
all types of subcontracting type of companies. Yet they can't find labor because for whatever reason, people stopped, even parents stopped pushing their kids to go do that. When being like a licensed electrician is one of the greatest jobs you could have.
That's right.
But it starts there, and then you work your way down on all of these levels, and it just compounds.
Yeah.
Well, let me be the optimist here, right? So we started talking about, do you perfect it and then go to market, or do you just go out and fix it as it gets along? The problem is that this is probably a few lifetimes, and we're experiencing these cycles in our lifetime. And I'm sure administrations in the future, unless we go bust, but I'm being an optimist, they fix these problems and these patches all along. It could be generational, because the reality is that the city is thriving, the economy is thriving. Things are good. Look at the CPI numbers. It's just adjusting to it. People complain about the Fed, raising rates, and maybe they did, maybe it was too much, but you adjust to these things. And I think that's what the city's going through right now. I'm just having a hard time digesting the fact, other than the fact that the city is getting money for these migrants. The migrants are coming in, the city's getting paid. And what they're doing is they're throwing them into the mix. My nephew, when the migrant problem started in Greece, for his thesis, he flew out and he studied these communities and watched how, they evolved and how they went through. He got a psychology degree. And it was interesting to see that a lot of there's a group of migrants that are truly here for asylum. Families that are really in need. They've been ousted. They came from good homes. They had nowhere to go, and they're here. That's a very small percentage of the many migrants that are here that are looking to mooch, that are looking to do what they're doing. But if you look at Home Depot, if you look at a lot of these retail shops, they're out there. They're trying to work.
Yeah.
They're trying to get a job. They're really trying to do it. But there's a small percentage of them that go from asking you if they could help you to pushing, packages or pushing, drugs on the corner. I mean, but this is part of it. And again, you throw it out there and you try to fix it as you go along. The only thing is that when you start to throw it down the throats of these communities, you have activists, artists like Scott Lebedo that's like, no, enough's enough. And if you really listen to him, there's times that he's got such a great point. I like what he's saying.
I mean, the other day they just shut that public school down. Did you see that? Kids couldn't go to school because they were putting the migrants in the gym. I mean, listen, if you grew up here, you paid your taxes all this time, you're part of the community. I'm sorry, but nobody can just show up out of nowhere. I mean, it's just not how the world works.
Yeah.
Yet the problem just continues.
Economics just don't work. Listen, I'm all for, and we're getting off topic a little bit, but I'm all for America being the place for people to come to have a better life. But it has to be at the right time, right? When America is a place socially or economically where we can't even take care of our own people, how can we start accepting people from other countries, right? So let's take care of our people first. We have veterans. We have people on women that are homeless. Let's solve the problem we have in our country now. And then once we're stabilized, okay, and we could support people, and we have jobs available, and we have housing available, okay, open up the gates. Let's let them in. But it has to be done. It has to be done where it benefits both them and America. It has to be done in a way where we have all these vaccine controls here in America, but yet migrants can come in without the vaccine.
But we go back to where we started the conversation. Do you try to perfect it and then bring it on, or do you go into the market and fix it as it goes along? Yeah. I mean, you look at these, approaches and these philosophies, and you really gotta.
Well, I think he's right. You fix what's here now, before you, it's
perfect, but
it's like a restaurant. Like, deal with the people that are in the restaurant before you let another 200 in. I mean,
look, when the administration allows this to happen and then throws their hands up,
right?
I mean, I don't know. I'm not part of that. You allowed this to happen. What's your strategy? Take responsibility. Don't just throw your hands up, because at any given moment you could say enough, stop, close the border.
Yeah.
Like, do it, at any given moment. So I think that there's a lot behind the scenes that we're not seeing.
Yeah.
And we have an opinion about it, but I'm pretty sure that there's something there that they're not sharing with us, because it just doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, you can't have local politicians saying they want New York City to be a sanctuary city, and then the moment they come, the migrants come, you can say, I can't handle it. These migrants are going to bankrupt New York City. Like, come on.
Right.
So let's just have some balance and use some common sense. Common sense policy.
So, George, we got a couple minutes left. So I know you raise money typically for all your deals for the most part.
Yeah, for the most part.
Are you raising currently?
Yeah, always raising.
Always looking for investment?
Always looking for investment.
Is there a typical investment structure that you typically offer? I mean, for anybody that maybe is listening, might want to invest, what's the requirements? You have to be an accredited investor.
It all depends. In private equity, you got to be an accredited investor. I am currently part of a fund that does private transactions, buying shares from insiders of these companies that are unicorn companies that are poised to go public. Right now, there's a holdback on the amount of companies that are going public. I think that's 1,400 companies that are, successful companies that are poised to go public, but they're not there. The public markets are expensive money. So you got to really know what you're going to do with that money. There you have it. But as far as us raising money, we're always raising money. I love real estate because it's not, you're not buying a share or something and you hope that it goes public. Unless you're buying stock in public companies, you have your liquidity, right? Because private companies aren't liquid. But in the real estate world, their investment's collateralized by the asset. And any investment that comes into what we do is first money in, first money out. So whenever there's a liquidation, whenever there's something that happens or there's a windfall event, the investors are always first. And then you guarantee that interest rate, you put it in writing. They're B shareholders, so they don't have any risk. And any debt that needs to be taken, I take all the debt. And, I'm happy that I have some banking relationships, although I'm always complaining about the rate they charge me, but they're always funding me. BCB Bank is a great bank. They've been helping me along the way, and they're very easy to work with. I'm actually very happy, although I'm always fighting with them on rates, but that's the nature of the beast. Yeah. It's been easy to work with them, and they're very supportive. Their business support, but it's rate of return. If you put your money in a CD and you're getting 6% right now, when an investor tells me, George, I'm playing with $100 million. Why would I take any of that money and give it to you? Because I got somebody that's giving me 8 to 10%. Why would I give it to you? So if, depending on the deal, you structure the deal, you collateralize their money, you guarantee them an interest rate, and then you give them a piece of the profit.
I heard that years ago, there was a property that you owned that Rob was helping you either manage or rent out, and that at the same building, you guys both have a wild story that happened there.
Yeah, that was, you're talking about 80
I didn't even put that together until we were kind of talking about it after the fact. So
Tell
us a little bit about that story, because
so I was selling a building for this gentleman right here, and I set up a showing, and I showed up for the showing, right, which was confirmed. I think I was even with George when he confirmed it, and I got there, and the guy was like, "What are you doing here?" And I'm like,
the guy meaning the tenant,
one of the tenants, yeah. And I said, "I'm here for the showing," and he goes, "There's no thing, you're trespassing." And I'm like, "Trespassing? What?" I'm like, call George. And literally, the guy winds up getting, I don't even remember the exact details, but he gets in a screaming match with his girlfriend and this and that. And like, I'm just like now awkwardly there. And I said something, and I guess it ticked him off. And he literally let his pit bull go. And I, fortunately, was in really great shape at the time. And I sprinted out of the backyard, jumped over the fence, and made it out.
The pit bull's chasing you.
Yes. 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 Yes.
It's similar to that Joe B story.
Yeah,
when he went
except
on
it was chasing me and it was ready for the bite. But yeah, I don't think I ever went back for a showing after that.
Yeah,
So how close were you from getting bit by the time you got over the fence? I mean, are we talking about an 80-pound pit bull running full speed at you?
Definitely, it got to be every bit of 70, 80 pounds. It had to be. And 20 seconds, maybe, if that. It was close.
So, George, at the same building, you had an issue as well.
Yeah, I think that day you were driving by
Yeah.
and I saw you.
My office used to be around the corner from this building. And as I'm driving by, I see police presence. I'm like, George, you good? You're like, yeah, I'll be good. Start from the beginning. What happened?
So I had a tenant on the first floor that we were evicting. And what wound up happening is he got into a fight with his wife or girlfriend or whoever she was. And she called the cops on him, threw him out. He left from the first floor apartment and went and snuck in and broke the door to the attic and got into the attic. So I'm evicting him on the first floor. There is an eviction that I have with court papers that this guy should not be there anymore. So I go to the building and I'm walking through the building to see what apartments I have available. If they left, she left from the first floor because she got evicted. So the apartment was empty. So I hear somebody upstairs. So I go up to the attic. When I go up to the attic, this guy that was living in the first floor now lives in the attic. So he got pissed off. I said, why? What are you doing here? Before you know it, he goes to attack me. We're wrestling down the stairs. I'm calling we're fighting. I'm rolling down the stairs. I get up. I'm calling the police. I call the police. I was calling the police for 45 minutes to an hour. I left. I go across the street and I'm waiting for the police to come. That's when I saw you. Turns out he comes downstairs. I don't know who he called, but at that time, it was just a few weeks after Eric Gardner had been tragically killed.
That's right.
And it's only a couple of blocks away. So here I am, white guy, standing across the street. Cops come. There's probably about 30 or 40 people in the street right now, right? Everybody's on one side of the street. I'm on the other side of the street, and I'm trying to plead my case to the cops. And this guy tells the cops, no, what do you mean? He hit a child. And I don't even know where this child came from. It wasn't.
I still haven't seen one.
And cops come over and said, sorry, we have to arrest you. I was like, why? Because you hit a child. And they arrested me. Fast forward, I went to court. The case got dismissed. It got thrown out. But it was funny because it was a real big group of people outside. And in order to diffuse the situation, the cops arrested me. They felt that they got the upper hand, and I was taken away. And a few hours later, I was booked and everything. And in a few hours, I was let go.
But it could have been an ugly situation.
It could have been. Well, no. So a few of them tried to come to me, swinging at me, starting with me. That was when somebody else that I knew drove by, and he swings at me, catches my pants with a knife and cuts my pants. And Gateway Arms, Tito drives by at that moment. He's like, George, you all right? I said, let me get in. And he drove me around the block.
Wow.
And then when I came back, that's when the cops were there. And yeah, that was the story with 80 Corsinet. I still own it.
Do you?
Yeah, still own it.
That's great.
Okay.
Listen, George, this is great. Super entertaining talking to you. You're super smart and definitely bring a unique perspective on the real estate game, especially in the North Shore of Staten Island.
And I didn't bang my hand on the table.
Yeah, we did good without causing any of the white noise into the microphones. Listen, hopefully we get you on again soon. Thanks so much. This was great.
It's always a pleasure with you guys.
Yeah.
I enjoy your time.